We are living in a world right now where you can fix your genes. Your genes are damaged. We can fix them. It's called epigenetics. Genetic expression can be modified. So nobody gets a death sentence here. And you really need to wake up and understand that our body has a divine capacity by God to give you the ability to self-regulate and heal. That is my deep-rooted belief. That's my deep-rooted faith. And cancer is the end stage of dysregulation.
Hey, everybody. Well, today I'm excited to interview my friend, Dr. Gerry Curatola. He is an internationally acclaimed biologic dentist. He's a best-selling author. He's a researcher, humanitarian, 40 years in clinical practice. He's the founder of Rejuvenation Dentistry, and he has practices in New York City and East Hampton, New Jersey. I was just in New York City. I should have just come by and got my teeth cleaned.
Hampton's not New Jersey. They'd be very offended. It's actually East Hampton.
I'm sorry. East Hampton, New York. I'm sorry.
You got very upset. The Jersey Shore is totally different than the Hamptons.
That was the flub. My bad. My bad. Nice. And so Gerry he's a pioneer in many protocols and procedures in biologic medicine and dental practice. He's often referred to as the father of modern biologic dentistry. That's a pretty significant title. He's lectured extensively on the harmful effects of oral toxicity and inflammation. He is very outspoken on the harms of water fluoridation and the ongoing use of mercury in dental practice, like mercury fillings, people. He is also an expert on the oral microbiome. He's a founder and chief science officer of Revitin Life Sciences, which is a prebiotic dental formulation, Revitin toothpaste. We'll talk about that. And so I'm excited. Gerry's always got really fascinating things to say, and I've learned from him. And I think, some of my audience probably doesn't really know what biologic dentistry is. And so I'm excited to dig into that with you. So good to see you.
Yeah, you too, Chris. Great to be here. I was happy when you reached out, and I'm always happy to come and have a great talk about health and about cancer. I've always admired you from the beginning, and for you to take what was, as my mother used to say, there's no mistakes in life. There's just lessons and blessings, So, you had a big lesson on your health experience and your journey. And it's been something that, I've been passionate about too, because it's really interesting. When I came out of dental school, I actually did a master's program in holistic health. It was 1983. I know you called me the father. I could probably be the grandfather now, but 40 years later, 43 years almost, it's been a journey. And so when I came out, I did this master's program in what was called holistic health. That was voodoo back then, well, holistic health, those are the quacks and the crazies. And I learned a lot about many systems of medicine that looked at the body in a much more holistic, and that's a very trite word, holistic health and all that, but it looked at the body in a holistic, W-H-O-L-E, holistic. And that included the many different levels. And I'm finishing a book right now, sort of taking biologic medicine and explaining what biologic dentistry is from that perspective. Really, biologic dentistry is rooted in biologic medicine. And biologic medicine is very interesting, integrative philosophy of medicine that believes that we have a divine life force. And in Ayurveda, they call it prana, and Chinese medicine, they call it chi. And in the Western world, it's our spirit body, right? We're mind, body, spirit. It's not a cliche. It's a real thing. Someone sent me a video of this new technology that can actually read the energy field coming off your body right now as we're speaking, 1.5 feet from our body. And that's our spirit, which is not this fake thing that's floating around, up there and, or it's inside in a little compartment in your heart, or that's what I used to think as a kid. Where's my spirit? Where is that? And the reality is that life force is what gives us the capacity to self-regulate and heal. and we regulate and heal on 5 levels microbially. And I spent a lot of 22 years studying the human microbiome and specifically the oral microbiome. I was actually mentored by one of the, it was a mentor of mine, Dr. Stephen Moss, who was the chairman of, believe it or not, pediatrics and head and neck at NYU. And he was an MD, DDS, and he had a PhD, I believe. And he actually taught me about this microbial community, which we used to think, bacteria are bad, you got to kill them. And now we understand that no, we are made of microbes, and those microbes keep us alive and keep us regulated. The oral microbiome is such an essential part of your immune system, of immune system modulation, which we can talk about in a little bit. But suffice it to say, we regulate on a microbial, biochemical pathways, energetic, which is really interesting, meridian flow in the body and what that means and how often it's misunderstood. Energy channels that are, we call meridians, or Chinese medicine has talked about it for thousands of years, and it's in the fascia, which is also another part of our body that I never really learned much about in dental school. And then there's the psycho-emotional component, and then the spiritual, which is our connection to source, I call God. And that is as important as the microbial layers of regulation. So it's been a long path for me to explain that biologic dentistry isn't, oh, I do safe mercury removal. Oh, I don't do I take root canals out, or this is my favorite, I do biologic root canals. Well, that's like an oxymoron. That's like military intelligence, jumbo shrimp, biologic root canal. So I want anybody to know that if your dentist is performing root canal therapy, and we could talk about that, but that is the antithesis of what we would consider a biologic healthcare procedure. It's really kind of the opposite, because it's embalming and keeping something non-vital, what's called non-vital or dead. We keep a dead tissue in the body in the hopes that, you're going to be okay. It's like, so biologic dentistry for me, and I appreciate you saying the father of modern biologic dentistry. When I got into biologic dentistry, it was a path from that program I did out of dental school, which was 1983, to Harvard Medical School had a program in the late 90s for complementary and alternative medicine, which I got this brochure that basically said it's a course program in complementary and alternative medicine at Harvard, open to all healthcare professionals. And this was really interesting because I get there, and the first day I'm sitting next to this guy, and he goes, hey, I'm Bob. And I said, hey, I'm Gerry Curatola. And he said, oh, hi, Gerry. What do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a dentist. And he looked at me and he goes, he had a big MD on his tag. And he goes, well, what are you doing here? And that was like, well, Bob, this, even though we went to separate schools, and we learned, oh, look, I got a bunch of hearts. I guess I was doing this.
I've never seen that. Is that going to make hearts on mine too if I do it?
I don't think, oh, there it goes. Yeah, you just got to make the heart. So this, which I love, the mouth is not divorced from the rest of the body. And that was the moment in the late 90s that I said, I got to write a book, The Mouth-Body Connection. And that's when I wrote, I don't know, I have a copy. Oh, here it is. That's when I wrote this. I wrote this and I wrote it for the layperson. I actually didn't plan to write it for the professional community, but I've had so many dentists write me and say, wow, Gerry, I learned so many things in your book, The Mouth-Body Connection, that we were never taught in dental school. So from there was a nurse that was really, she was a critical care nurse. She became a holistic she got involved in holistic nutrition. She actually healed my daughter of chronic sinus issues nutritionally, which I'm sure, you relate to very well. And then she came to me, she became my patient. She came to me and one day and she said, oh, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I said, oh, are you going to Sloan Kettering in New York? And she said, hell no, that's a meat grinder. I'm going to the Paracelsus Clinic in Switzerland, founded by Dr. Thomas Rau. And the next words out of her mouth were, Gerry, you need to meet Thomas. That was around 1999, around that time. She said, you need to meet Thomas. And I said, who? Thomas Rau and his famous restaurant, Rao's in New York, R-A-O. It's R-A-U. Rau is R-A-U. And she said, well, Thomas will not treat you for any cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer, any kind of cancer, colon cancer, ovarian cancer. He will not treat you until your mouth is cleaned up. So the first thing he says, if you have a cancer diagnosis, the first thing this man says is open your mouth. Do you have any root canals? You have any heavy metals? You got any mercury fillings? They're not silver fillings, everyone who's listening. They are 52% mercury. They're 26% silver. So it's, in my opinion, a fraudulent misrepresentation for any doctor, any dentist to say it's a silver filling when it's more than 50% mercury. So he'll say that. He'll say, did you get your wisdom teeth removed? Do you have any jaw cavitations, which are the residual necrotic areas of bone where teeth may have been removed? So all of these things, and that was, do you have a lot of tooth-colored fillings, composite resin fillings? Because composite resin is loaded with BPAs. It's bisphenol A, glycidyl methacrylate. And so those plastic fillings in people's mouths that they grind on and that wear very easily, that's why we use a lot of ceramic now. Those plastic fillings could be dysregulating your endocrine system. They are endocrine disruptors, major, and they're major causal relation to breast cancer, ovarian cancer, prostate cancer in men, all of that stuff, just from plastic fillings. So that man in that moment changed my life. And I realized that there is a huge connection, and I play a very big role in helping people on their health journey and helping them do what biologic medicine believes, which is we all have this divine capacity to self-regulate and heal. And so that, in a very, very long response, is what biologic dentistry is.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I was going to ask you to talk about your progression into it, but you just did. So
we read each other's minds.
Yeah, and it's not your first rodeo either. So I'd love to get into some specifics, because I know there are people. You're not the first biologic dentist I've interviewed, but it's been a few years since I've interviewed one, and I know there are people in my audience that want to understand just those sort of basics. So let's start with fluoride. What is wrong with fluoride? What's the problem with fluoride? Is there a benefit to it in any application, in your opinion?
I was just interviewed in a television spot. I forgot what Merit Street Network. They were the ones brave enough, because they're not being underwritten by the fluoride toothpaste companies and all that. They're brave enough to have a debate with me and a representative of the American Dental Association, which I am a card-carrying member for over 40 years. And but I am a staunch anti-fluoride doctor. Fluoride is, for everyone to understand, the research on fluoridation and the perceived benefit of fluoride. And there's two types. There's a chemical that we put in the water. She actually has a renowned, a reputation as a hazardous waste product. It's hydrofluoric. So we call it the silicate fluorides. Hydrofluorosilicic acid is a byproduct of aluminum manufacturing, phosphate fertilizer manufacturing, and uranium enrichment. So you have three major lobbying groups. You have Alcoa, Monsanto, and the Department of Defense, all producing this toxic. They have to wear hazmat suits to dump it into the water. And it's a very convenient way to dilute a hugely toxic on so many levels. I mean, we could get into all the things that it causes, including major risk of bone cancer, osteoporosis, thyroid interference. It calcifies your pineal gland. I mean, I could keep going on what hydrofluorosilicic acid in the water does. So that's one type.
Let me add that it's illegal for them to dump it into rivers, lakes, and streams, right? Or the ocean.
Well, what
but
they
it's
used
legal to add to drinking water.
prior to this research that was done in the late 40s, by the way, at the Army facilities in, I think it was Grand Rapids, Michigan, or somewhere there in late 40s, early 50s, they were finding that, wow, when you introduce fluoride, which is from the element fluorine on the periodic table, what's interesting about fluorine, Fl minus, is for any organic any chemistry people out there, Fl minus is the most highly reactive, non-radioactive element on the periodic table. So what it does when you introduce it into teeth and bones is it replaces hydroxyapatite, which is not to be confused with the synthetic hydroxyapatite they're putting in toothpaste under the banner of the new fluoride, and that's doesn't work, and it's not good. By the way, you don't get cavities from a lack of fluoride. Everybody understand that they've drilled this narrative that's just completely false. You do not need fluoride to not get cavities. What you need is a balanced oral microbiome, which is rooted in good nutrition, balanced pH, and proper salivary flow.
I want to go deep on that, but before I do, just to make this point from a common sense perspective, they've been putting fluoride in drinking water since the 1950s, right? Everybody's drinking it. It's in bottled water too. And there's cavities. Kids have cavities. Adults have cavities. I mean, cavities have not stopped. Right?
In any case, there are fluoridated communities that even have higher rates of decay than non-fluoridated. And that's in very,
central fluorosis
areas.
Right.
They've used this excuse. By the way, CBS News, because now people are waking up, and we happen to have a director of HHS, whether you like him or you don't like him. This guy is brilliant, and he's rooted in science. Robert Kennedy Jr. has been branded as an anti-vaxxer. All his kids are vaccinated, by the way. He's all about vaccine safety, which doesn't exist a lot. They even took out the recourse that people have who have children who have been injured by vaccines. You can't sue the vaccine company, even though there's a huge number of adjuvants that are crazy and ridiculous, including fetal tissues and all kinds of other stuff that are in vaccines that don't belong there. So this Make America Healthy Again, by the way, it's a good thing, everyone. We need to be healthier. You have one in, I think it's 40 children being diagnosed on the spectrum for autism, when you have, when I was a kid, it was 1 in 10,000. So something is wrong. I think it's a confluence of factors, but we need to look at it and not be ignorant and ignore it and not listen to the narrative that is telling you, no, don't look over there, look over here, because here's the facts. Since 1970, this is data from the World Health Organization, from 1970 to 2010, the decrease in decay rates in fluoridated versus non-fluoridated communities, whole countries, fluoridated versus non-fluoridated. World Health Organization looked at this, is exactly the same drop. As a matter of fact, I put that up in the interview I did with the ADA guy, and he was like, well, that's because we use fluoride in the salt in Europe, and, because most of Western Europe, they were why did Western Europe not adopt fluoridation? Because it's mass medicating a population. You can't control the dose, by the way. So if you drink a lot of water or you go out to eat a lot and you're in restaurants that use fluoridated water, you're not getting 1 part per million, everyone. And you're using fluoride toothpaste and fluoride mouthwash and da-da-da-da-da. Fluorosis in children, by the way, which is defects to the enamel of teeth, making them more prone to decay, the very thing that you're using this toxic halide chemical. So if it's on toothpaste, they have to put a poison warning on it. And if it's in the water, it's basically a very dirty hazardous waste, which is loaded with arsenic and lead and other things, not just hydrofluorosilicic acid. And by the way, I started to say, prior to putting it in the water, they were putting it in these drums and burying it in the ground. It is so corrosive that it ate through the metal drums, and it would contaminate acres and acres and acres of crops and farmland, and toxic in the ground. But they would, like, if they can mass dilute it in the water under the banner of preventative dentistry, it would be good. It has not contributed to a decrease in decay. There's been not one controlled clinical trial for its safety or efficacy. It does not work. Most of the scientists agree that it doesn't work. And there's a huge political lobby, and it's one of the problems with our government, is that you have these huge, very, very, multi-billion-dollar companies that can control lobbying in Congress and can actually control media and control the spin that people are getting. So CBS News had, it was just, I went apoplectic when I saw this, that, taking fluoride, it's now banned in 2 states. Utah and Florida banned fluoride. It's gonna be banned across the nation because it doesn't belong there. It's toxic. There is way more harm than any iota of perceived good from water fluoridation. So if there's any one thing, and to have to go out and buy unfluoridated water, buy water. I mean, we have reservoirs upstate New York. When I was a kid, New York City had some of the purest water in the country from the Catskill reservoirs, where they still bottle water from up there that isn't fluoridated. And it's really, I think, a very unnecessary. And why is it banned? Why did the California Supreme Court come out and say fluoride is an unnecessary health risk for children? 72 studies showing drinking fluoridated water in children with developing brains caused a decrease in IQ, cognitive impairment. Fluoride is a neurotoxin. So that's the dirty truth about fluoride and why it doesn't belong in the water. Now, toothpaste and other things, let's talk about, is that okay? Well, fluoride in toothpaste and fluoride in mouthwash, basically, it's so reactive that it converts your teeth. So does it stimulate remineralization? Yep, it can. But what's the mineral that's made? Fluorapatite. What are the physical properties of fluorapatite? It's like glass. It's very hard, but it has about 35% lower tensile strength than natural teeth and bones, which is why after the introduction of fluoridation in the 50s, they studied hip fracture rates in the 80s. And they expected to see hip fracture rates going down under this mantra that fluoride makes teeth and bones stronger. No, it makes them hard, but more brittle. So they actually saw an exponential increase in hip fracture rates. And there's been something like 21 studies linking fluoride to osteoporosis, another epidemic problem, thyroid impairment, cancer. So yes, kidney cancer, lots of different cancers. So that's, again, the dirty truth about water fluoridation and topical fluoridation.
That's great. And I think it's important to point out, I mean, if anyone is skeptical about this, there's some terrific books about it. The Fluoride Deception is one. I think Christopher Bryson, and there's a documentary called An Inconvenient Tooth, which I love the name. Also worth watching, that you can really learn the history of all this.
Fluoridealert.org. Fluoride, yeah. F-L-U-O-R, it's not F-L-O-R, it's F-L-U-O-R-I-D-E, alert.org. There's a paper on there called The 50 Reasons Why Fluoridation is a Problem. By the way, Western Europe did not adopt fluoridation of municipal water supplies, countries putting fluoride in all their water. They didn't do it in Europe. Why? Because, well, they were very sensitive to it after World War II and the Nuremberg trials and all that, because it's mass medicating a population without their consent. They're drugging a population without their consent. And now we have 71 studies showing cognitive impairment. So,
well, and for the person that refuses to believe that fluoride is bad, here's the thing. You can still get it in your toothpaste, right? You don't need it in your water. if you really think you need fluoride, hey, go buy the fluoride toothpaste and brush your teeth with it twice a day. You're going to get your fluoride. I personally don't use fluoridated toothpaste. Haven't in 20 years.
By the way,
Still got all my teeth.
if you have fluoride in your toothpaste, read about, and this is the part that really gets me upset. And now there's 6 or 7 class action lawsuits, thank God, against the majors with fluoride toothpaste because they're marketing to children with like Disney and Kanto on the front of the box, and then on the back it says keep out of reach of children. If more than a pea-sized amount, keep out of reach of children under 6 years of age. If more than a pea-sized amount is swallowed, call poison control right away. Well, guess what? All kids swallow toothpaste. And the question is that fluoride in your toothpaste preventing your kids' cavities? I will tell you, no. If your child is getting cavities, it's not because they didn't have fluoride toothpaste. It's because their microbiome is not balanced. And we could talk about that because that's been a big part of 22 years of research that I've done.
I'd love to get into that because cavities are a bit of a mystery to me because I know people that eat really well, eat really healthy, lots of fruits and vegetables and whatnot, but still got cavities and, don't use fluoride toothpaste and that, they kind of do all the healthy oral health stuff, let's just say, but still have had cavities. And so I'd love for your opinion on a couple things related to that. One is chewing gum. Does that contribute to cavities? 2, the oral microbiome, as you mentioned, and then also xylitol.
Yeah, I'm glad that's we could cover all of that. Because there's a lot of controversy about xylitol. And what's interesting is that xylitol is a brilliant development. Xylitol was developed by a subsidiary of DuPont, Teniska in Europe, made commercial xylitol. Now, let's be real. Xylitol can be found in cranberries. It can be found in it comes from pretty birch bark. And as a raw material, the xylan, which is the raw material of xylitol, which is a sugar alcohol, it's in a number of different things, but they found a way to take a huge amount of bio waste, GMO corn cobs, and that they would throw away. They found a way to extract the xylan, put it into this industrialized process of hydrogenation called, and it's actually, they actually using Raney nickel, a heavy metal, in the catalyzation of this stuff. So you take this raw material, right? Whether it's GMO corn cobs or it is pretty birch bark, and it goes through this process. It's a chemical process of hydrogenation. And what's produced is this white powder, which is actually in organic chemistry textbooks. It's called a high value chemical that has very, very low caloric content. And it's sweet, really sweet. And it actually can be used as a preservative in like mouthwash because it has a lot of water. So it prevents microbial buildup. So it's very antibacterial. And the big thing they did, and this is ingenious as well. First, they took something you were throwing away and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar sugar substitute. Okay, the new methadone of the sugar industry. We had aspartame, we had saccharin, and now, lo and behold, we have the sugar alcohols, and we have erythritol and xylitol and sorbitol and all these, and they're real popular until you start to see erythritol 2 years ago was found to make your platelets more sticky, and it was raised your incidence of thrombocytic events like heart attack and stroke, so clot formation. Well, lo and behold, Cleveland Clinic did a study, and they found the same thing. That xylitol can increase your risk of cardiovascular events and stroke because of this making the platelets sticky. Xylitol is not absorbed, it's poorly absorbed and not metabolized by the body. So it's very disturbing to the entire digestive tract. Erythritol is absorbed, but not metabolized. It's almost worse. And so beware, they sneak erythritol into lots of things like monk fruit, which sounds great as a sweetener, until you have monk fruit sweetener. I did a little blog on this once. It was like monk fruit, and then you read underneath it with erythritol, or that Baya drink, no calories, but it has erythritol. And erythritol also is sweet. So if it tastes really sweet and it doesn't have any sugar, read the ingredients. It is not good for you. So xylitol is very disturbing to the microbiome. They did studies in Finland and in Europe saying, whoa, xylitol is the new magic to prevent cavities because it keeps strep mutans from sticking to teeth. Okay, strep mutans bacteria from sticking to teeth. Well, here's the deal. Strep mutans bacteria, which has been the bacteria that was identified when I was in dental school over 40 years ago, that was, if you get tooth decay, yeah, strep mutans causes that. If you get gum disease, you get porphyromonas gingivalis. Until you understand the new science of the human microbiome, which is basically all of those microbes, those are commensal bacteria, porphyromonas gingivalis, strep mutans, even Fusobacterium nucleatum, a really nasty one when they live in your mouth. Okay. When you balance the microbiome, which is what I spent 15 to 20 years working on, an oral care formulation that promotes microbial homeostasis. And that's a fancy word of saying balance the natural ecology of the mouth. When I was on Martha Stewart years ago, and I was starting this research, and she said, tell me about the research. I said, well, Martha, toothpaste, was invented by soap makers 100 years ago. I said, basically it was flavored detergent for your mouth. And, my mother used to say, I'll stick soap in your mouth if you say a bad word. I'll wash your mouth out with soap. It's like, those were the old days. And I used to think, well, I'm brushing with it anyway, and then we started putting chemicals in like fluoride and antibacterial, this germ killing stuff, which is chlorhexidine and
triclosan.
Triclosan was biggie. That was
which is that still in some toothpaste? I know that's bad
it's banned.
stuff.
It's banned it's been linked to cancer.
Triclosan. Yeah, but they were putting that in toothpaste for years.
The insanity of triclosan is that it was put in as the magic bug killing ingredient in Colgate Total, which was launched in 1998. That's the same year that the FDA mandated a poison warning in fluoride toothpaste, by the way. And that was because Procter & Gamble had a product called Crest Sparkle that was fluorescent blue, bubblegum flavored, and it had sparkles in it. Enough fluoride in a regular sized tube of toothpaste, a commercial tube of toothpaste, to be fatal to 2 children under 5. So now you make it taste like candy, which they're still doing, by the way. You have bubblegum flavored toothpaste out there that's supposed to be, it'll get your kid to brush with it. Well, if it has fluoride and they're swallowing it, it puts them at very high risk of toxicity and even death, right? Can you imagine a 4-year-old brushing their teeth, eating the toothpaste, and the mother comes by and sees the child, unconscious on the bathroom floor? It's unconscionable. And so it took them until from 1988, when that product came out, not until 98, the FDA, the notorious FDA poison warning on fluoride toothpaste came out, which people still don't see. It's like buried in the small print on the side. But, I have a lot of parents, young mothers, who read the box and they're like, why is there a poison warning on Crest or Colgate or, any of these fluoride toothpaste? Even Tom's of Maine, which was a natural toothpaste, took out artificial dyes and artificial flavors and artificial colors. And they caved because they wanted an ADA seal of acceptance, and they dumped fluoride in. It was bought by Colgate a number of years ago. Tom's of Maine is not owned by Tom's of Maine. Tom Chappelle.
Yeah, I was a Tom's of Maine fan until they sold out.
Yep. It was a major sellout.
Yeah.
When they put fluoride in, I was like, really? He was just getting ready to sell a company. And I admired it in the 80s when it came out because I was like, wow, somebody's taking the garbage out of the detergent product. But anyway, on Martha Stewart, when she was asking me about it, I said, Martha, what we've learned is that, we don't want to put pesticides in toothpaste anymore. We really, I said, it's time for doctors to get out of the pesticide business. And what I'm promoting is organic gardening for your mouth. It just came in my head, and it was like the perfect sound launch, sound bite, like it's time for doctors to do organic gardening in and on your body, not just in the environment around us. And that is the truth. So,
well, and it's like essentially it's in like a dose of antibiotics every time you're brushing your
right.
teeth with some of these additives they were using, and that's not good.
No. And so xylitol, which has now become a darling, that the really crazy thing about xylitol is that I still see research touting it as healthy and natural. It's a natural sugar, and it is not natural at all. It's synthetically made. It is either made by an industrialized process of hydrogenation, or there's another process where they use fermentation with bacteria to make it, but it's the same thing. It's a white powder. It's basically a high-value chemical, and it kills strep mutans bacteria. Now, why do you want to kill? It's time to get out of pesticide business and promote organic gardening. And that's what I tell these natural dentists, these biologic, they use that term, biologic. They don't even understand what the philosophy and what what biologic dentistry actually is. They themselves don't understand. They join a club like the IAOMT, which is International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. And IAOMT is an organization that, they tried to raise awareness. They really were founded on like the dentists that were against use of mercury in dentistry, which I applaud.
Hal Huggins, right?
Yeah, no, Hal was right at that. And Hal was very early on about root canal, root canals of this, root canals that. I'm like, even if they're really well done, Hal, do they need to come out? And this is before I went to Switzerland, and I followed Dr. Thomas Rao and thinking about, well, what's the big deal? If the root canal is filled and, it's embalmed, well, taxidermy on teeth, if it's done really well, is it good? No, because 100, and there's been already PubMed studies that show 100% of root canal teeth, endodontically treated teeth, produce endotoxins. Endotoxins are bacteria and bacterial byproducts that are very dysregulating to the human immune system, which we could talk about because we'll get into the micro.
And are you saying these would not be there if the root canal was not there?
Endotoxins, yeah, well, endotoxins are bacteria and bacterial byproducts. They're produced, by the way, they're produced by root canal. Root canal teeth always show endotoxin presence. Metal implants, titanium implants, which became very popular. We thought they were, I did my first metal implant in 1989. And I was like, wow, the bone loves this. The bone grows around it, and it's great. I have 3 metal implants myself. And I'm like, this is fantastic, until we see what happens. The reason the bone grows around it so quickly, and the bone that grows around it, is what we call sclerotic bone. So when we did histology studies on the bone around metal implants, we found that it was very dense. It didn't have a good blood supply. It was like ischemic blood supply, right? Sclerotic bone. It's like scar tissue bone. Ceramic implants, or zirconia implants, which we've totally shifted to zirconia. Most of the major implant companies are introducing zirconia or alternatives because the handwriting's on the wall for that. Zirconia implants do not block meridian flow. Zirconia implants do not create sclerotic bone. They cause the formation of vascular bone, which is bone with blood supply. So the life of human bone is blood. You need blood to have healthy bone. The life of teeth, believe it or not, is saliva. You need saliva to have healthy teeth and gums. So if you have reduced salivary flow because you had chemotherapy or radiation, we've got to be really attentive to making sure your mouth. And that's why I created this. I created a prebiotic formulation, and we could talk about this in a little bit, and why rebalancing and promoting a healthy microbiome is an essential component to a healthy immune system. So the oral microbiome and your immune system are like this. That's a really important concept for everyone to understand. And we know that cancer is not this, it doesn't fly into your body and set up shop and yada, yada, or, he's genes, his mother, Susie's mother had breast cancer. Susie's grandmother had breast cancer. So Susie's got breast cancer. Susie's got the BRCA gene and da-da-da-da-da and yada, and all this stuff. What we know now is, whoa, we are living in a world right now where you can fix your genes. your genes are damaged, we can fix them. It's called epigenetics. Genetic expression can be modified. So nobody gets a death sentence here. And you really need to wake up and understand that our body has a divine capacity by God to give you the ability to self-regulate and heal. That is my deep-rooted belief. That's my deep-rooted faith. And cancer is the end stage of dysregulation. There's other stuff going on before that diagnosis comes. And what we do now, and that's why cancer prevention, I know you as well have been involved with Fran Drescher's Cancer Schmancer organization. And I love Fran because she's, she took her ovarian cancer walk and turned it into a way to help people wake up and understand that cancer prevention is a real thing. And being able to help our bodies regulate and heal, that happens in biologic medicine. It happens on a microbial level. That's why this is all about helping with the microbial level, biochemical, energetic, psycho-emotional, which is, I love psycho-emotional. I have a lot of patients who come to me who have had wake-up calls, cancer diagnosis, they got chronic Lyme, they got this, they got autoimmune disease, they have all kinds of things. And to me, I really believe strongly that life gives us lessons and blessings. There's no mistakes. There's no, oh, I could have, would have, should have. It's like, no, you got this. Okay, what's the purpose of this? What's the path in my time on this planet? What is the purpose of me learning from this experience, and what can I do better, and how can I help my fellow man? How can we stay in that state of love and gratitude and help others while we have this limited time on this planet? So for me, it's really been about helping patients understand that psycho-emotional components of regulation is just as important as the microbial, biochemical, energetic, the psycho-emotional component, and the spiritual connection. So, how do we connect from here to there? You got to get out of your head here, but let's talk about here, because I deal with this a lot, and I call it stinking thinking. I know there are people that they get into this head like they're never going to get better, and they're doomed, and they're never going to get better. Well, guess what? If that's where your head's at, you're not going to get better. If you've got to tell yourself, I have a divine capacity to self-regulate and heal. I'm on a path to healing, and this is part of the process. I'm here. That kind of, there was a guy, one of the books I read when I did that Harvard program in complementary alternative medicine was by a Dr. Bernie Siegel. He wrote a book called Love, Medicine, and Miracles.
Huge fan.
Said,
I've interviewed Bernie, and
kids,
I love that book.
I fell in love with the book too, because I was like, wow, for this guy,
beautiful book.
As a, he was a renowned surgeon, and as a guy who like literally was boots on the ground, who were the patients who did better and who were the patients who did worse? The patients who did better, he called them exceptional patients. They were the ones that had this positive attitude, positively engaged with their doctors, and positive. And guess what? Years later, Bruce Lipton writes a book called Biology of Belief. What you believe changes the way your cells express themselves. It can change the way your genes express themselves. So you have the power. The biology of belief was about our intention, our belief, the power of faith. Faith is believing in what you can't see, and it's the substance of things we hope for. And
yes,
that is something that you ask.
Preach it.
I know, right? I sound like it. I actually
good.
When I was 6
and the first principle is you have to believe healing is possible, right?
Amen.
That's what we're talking about. That's the very first principle in the healing journey, is you just have to believe healing is possible. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to, know how you're going to do it, how it's going to happen, but you just have to believe it's possible.
Yes. And there are a lot of people, and I, listen, I totally relate and I sympathize for patients who have really gotten dealt a really hard hand of things that happen, and aggressive cancer and aggressive breast cancer, aggressive things. You really, if you do not get rid of the stinking thinking, which is what I call it, stinking thinking. You have got to get out of your head. How do you get out of your head? You connect here, by the way. So the spiritual connection and the psycho-emotional issues and the spiritual, they're like right next to each other, crown chakra, and then you got third eye and, whatever. The fact of the matter is that the spiritual connection is, prayer, but meditation. I always tell people, I said, if prayer is like talking to God, meditation is listening. It's like tuning in and getting those divine downloads. You really need to do that and get those down. And the health benefits of meditation are extraordinary. Days that I meditate versus days that I'm like, oh, I'm running around, I don't have time, and da 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 da. The days I meditate are so much more focused. They're so peaceful. They're so positive than the days where I'm just running around, letting my brain, on fire, getting hit with. And I forget what they say, how many decisions we make in an average day. It's insane.
It's a lot. So yeah, it's a lot. I don't know the number either. Well, and it's like, I mean, even just the internet and social media, it scrambles your brain. It really does. It's all these little short, it's funny that I've noticed lately there's a new term and they call it micro learning. Like, which, all these little clips you're watching, and maybe you are learning useful things, right? Maybe some of it is useful. Most of it is just entertaining. Let's just admit, like Facebook figures out, Instagram figures out like kind of what you're interested in, whether it's clips of celebrities or whatever, right?
Wife and I were just on a vacation. And we're in a beautiful place. We're on the Amalfi Coast of Italy, and it was just beautiful. It's really natural beauty, like you can't believe. Looking out, and we're at a hotel that looked out over, it's high up in the mountains, and it looks out over the Mediterranean, and it's spectacular. And my wife is on the chair, scrolling, getting bombarded with, and she's like, Trump and Musk are in a feud, and this and that, and I'm like, Georgia, turn that off now. Get off let's just take in this beauty. And so, I would like take it out of our hands and I'm like, we're going for a walk, we're hike, and so we started, we did an hour, I think it was like 15,000 steps instead. And we came back and we were laughing and we were so much happier than, just keep being bombarded by so much garbage that we're being fed, so much overload, so much manipulation. I've never, as a kid, I never knew. The older I've gotten, I've realized that, wow, we have a country that's so bitterly divided. We have all of this stuff. And I realized, oh, maybe there's some intent behind all that because it's an easier way to control everyone, right? A divided house cannot stand. And so what we need to do is when you do meditate, when you do download, when you do things like hiking, when you do things like healthy exercise and things like that, you get out of that and you're really able to kind of get in touch with your higher self. You're able to reconnect on a higher level than all of this bombardment of information, a lot of it not good.
Yeah. Unplugging is huge. We talk about that a lot in our community of just, what I call getting on a low information diet. I'm not the first person to say that, but, just you don't need to consume all this information that's coming at you. And again, it scrambles your brain. It causes stress and anxiety. Your dopamine receptors kind of just get fried. It turns you into like ADD, zombie.
Right.
It really, I mean, it's just amazing if you can just not look at your phone for a whole day. You feel like a different person. You really do. And I even struggle with it, right? Because I have social media that I'm managing. And so it's like I'm, part of my work is creating what I hope is useful content, interviewing you and sharing information and clips with people. And so part of what I do is contributing, right, to the information out there. And I hope obviously I'm trying to contribute in a good way, but still
very good.
It's still so easy to watch a great clip and then the very next clip is something stressful and you get sucked into it. And not to get too political, but I want to agree with you on something. I think division is the goal. right?
Yeah.
I think there are forces at work that continually seek to divide us politically, and I think most people agree on most things, right? And I think we need to focus on the things that we agree on.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Make America Healthy Again has somehow become, it makes me sad that people on the left can't get on board because it's a right wing, whatever, Republican agenda,
Everything
conservative
is a
agenda. Because
MAGA.
it's,
A Maha is a MAGA.
yeah, because it's a conservative agenda, they have to oppose it. I'm like, this, that's
It's insane.
it's not good.
Yeah.
It's very tribal. Like, I
Yeah.
think the best thing that probably that you could do politically is to resign from a political party, right? Be an independent thinking person, right? So you're not pledging allegiance to one side or the other. And you can acknowledge when one side does something good, you can say, this is great. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter which side it is. You can
Exactly.
just see it for what it is. Like, this is good, or hopefully the intention is good. The promises are good. I don't know if they're going to follow through, but I'm on board with the promise. That's the best I can do, right?
Who would not want to have a healthier child, a healthier family, and
Yeah,
probably the generation that I that I'm interacting with a lot, especially, in my own social media. I have a group of young people. They're all mid-20s, and they are, they're connected to technology and data, like way beyond. They take the phone out of my hands when I'm trying to do something because they're like
too
impatient.
slow. Yeah. Yeah, let me do it.
Sorry, I'm a baby boomer. What can I tell you? I'm apologizing. And they love what I love, the message that I have. They love, that because, really, I do talk to them about mind, body, spirit. And I think that the Gen Zers out there, and I really have such a heart for that generation. I mean, I have my children are millennials, and they are amazing. They're focused. They're really, really strong. But they sometimes, they're trying so hard to make it and to do their thing that I think they are some of that generation struggle with being in touch on a spiritual level. And I think Gen Zers they're very spiritual. I mean, they're much more open spiritually, and they are very open about being spiritual. And many of them, they've actually become they've become spiritual, and they become conservative because they are awake and they are seeing, and they want a different world, but they recognize that there's got to be a higher power to help fix this world. And to get to that higher power, the currency, for that higher power is love and gratitude. Love and gratitude kind of like brings the walls down wherever you are. Because when you're stuck in your head and you're polarized in your thinking, and I mean, like, I've seen MAGA people just as bad as the far left, and behaving with
Yes.
that hatred.
Right.
That hatred.
Totally.
The hatred is like, I'm like, whoa, that is the opposite of what we need to make our country healthier, to make us healthier, to make everyone healthier, our children and our future healthier.
I love this quote. I heard Scott Adams say something that I think was so insightful. And he said, if you judge a group of people by the worst person in that group, then you're the worst person in your group.
It's so true.
Right? I'm paraphrasing, but that's the essence of what he said. It's like, you can take any group of people, right? Political group or racial group or anything, and pick out some really bad actors, right? Some just
Right.
some terrible people, and try to see, right? And try to demonize the whole group. But you're actually a horrible person for doing that, right?
Exactly.
Because you are really basically trying to demonize an entire group of people based on some bad actors. Like, we just shouldn't do that. Like, that's not good for humanity. It's not good for our society or our culture. Like, we need to believe the best about people, right? We need to look for the good and believe the best about people. And again, with politics, it's weird because politicians are always promising things that sound good, but rarely follow through. And so the best we can do is, sort of support a good intention, right, with our votes, support a promise that we hope to see achieved, and then we stand back and go, oh, okay, well, let's see if they can do it, right? I'm all for you doing it. Please do it, right? But
absolutely,
I'm encouraged. I'm definitely encouraged by the steps that RFK's taken, right? And some people have criticized him. Some of his supporters have already started criticizing him because they think he's not moving fast enough. But let me just say, look, the wheels turn slow here.
Yeah.
The guy's he's got 4 years, right? At least he's not going to be fired. Unless something crazy happened, he's got at least 4 years to really get in there and reorganize these agencies and really push through policy change that takes away the influence from the pharmaceutical companies and the chemical producers that want to put fluoride in the water, and the big ag and big pharma's influence on the regulatory agencies. I mean, it's a really big mess, right? And even just AMA, CDC, FDA policy, there's a lot to sort out and straighten out, and it's many decades of corruption. And so, like, give the guy, just give him some time to like work this out.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I will tell you that, and I come from a medical family. My brother's a physician. My sister's a dentist. We have mostly physicians on both sides too, and and all of them are deeply rooted. Many of them are deeply rooted in pharma and and all of that, and they believe the media narrative that he's this kook and great. Meanwhile, he was the darling of the left. He was the environmental hero. He did more to clean up the Hudson, to end industrial pollution, to go after companies that were destroying the environment around us. He was on the cover of every magazine, and he was the darling of the environmental movement. And the minute he started to question the safety of vaccines, he became the target, not the darling, target of the of really not the left. That's really unfair. He
Both
became
sides.
the target of big interest groups, especially big pharma. And
that's right.
That, to me, when I started to see that, I started to say, well, why are they going after him? Like, this is really unfair. Because I actually lectured with him because he was the first to kind of expose the use of thimerosal, low-level mercury, in vaccines in developing nervous systems. It showed the most neurotoxic element on earth, mercury. And I'm speaking on getting mercury out of, because 46% of dentists still were doing dental amalgam, which is
right. So I mean, you're already saying, hey, mercury is a problem, it's toxic, we shouldn't be putting it in our mouths. And he's like, well, it's in the vaccines. You're like, well, that's not good either.
Yeah, exactly. Well, vaccines was even more dangerous because something about trace amounts and how insidious that is past the blood-brain barrier and all that. And then all the autism studies that then started to get, oh no, that's not real, don't look there. No, the American Academy of Pediatrics, which came out against thimerosal, then was like, oh no, it's okay, it's safe. We didn't really get a clear correlation there. I mean, are you kidding me? What is mercury doing in there? You know why mercury was in there is because it was a preservative. And now they didn't have to put these vaccines in the refrigerator anymore. They could ship them to Africa and everywhere else. I mean, it's insane. So
the adjuvant immune stimulating aspect of mercury too, right?
Yes.
It was in there because it would stimulate an immune response. Whereas if you just injected a pure inactivated sort of, quote unquote, viral serum, your body doesn't do much. Nothing really happens. So they have to like stimulate an immune response, and that so that hopefully your immune cells will associate the viral particles with and sort of like tag them as a threat, right? Because of this immune response, and then you've developed some immunity or whatever. I mean, that's the general, theory behind vaccines.
Yeah, no, and then now you have the use of another technology like mRNA, which modifies and reprograms genetic codes. They said, no, it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. And now it's like, oh, well, it does do that. And actually, you can't turn it off. And so now you have kind of runaway inflammation. And that is a lot of very, very serious questions that should be looked at. And that's the important thing, is that let's just get honest. let's just take a really honest look and not have the FDA and the CDC stacked with a cesspool of corruption with people that were former farmer executives that are working for, to approve the very products from companies that they were, they may even still be on the board of, or that they work for. So, I mean, I do think you need a separation there to really protect and make sure that we are using materials, whether it's in dentistry, in medicine, or anywhere else, that are safe and effective.
I think that's right. And I think probably the key operating word is prevention, because for all of my lifetime, prevention has never been the goal of these government agencies, generally speaking, for public health, right? It's never been the goal of the director of the NIH, preventing disease. It's never been the goal. It's always been treating disease, treatments, more drugs, more treatments for disease, making money off of treating disease, because there's no money in prevention. And so the reason I'm so optimistic and hopeful about RFK is because he is the first guy to come in there with a focus on prevention. What are causing the problems? Let's remove the causes instead of just producing more drugs for the symptoms, right? Over and over and over. Like, we have a chronic childhood disease epidemic. We've got a very horrible healthcare system compared to many other nations in the world. Like, we need to get to the root cause of these problems, go back to first principles, back to the drawing board, assume nothing, and then replace, really it's like time to change the guard.
I mean, the low-hanging fruit in the room, and I'm like sort of aghast, because most of my colleagues at New York University that I was on faculty with, doctors who've done research, they all agree. Water fluoridation has done zero to improve dental health.
Yeah.
And the idea to defend the dumping of a toxic halide chemical, it's not even a halide chemical. It's a waste product, hydrofluoric, dumping it in the water, and it doesn't do anything. And literally all the statistics are there. All the data is there. And for CBS News to come out with a report saying a new study shows that taking fluoride away could result in 1 billion cavities, or whatever they said, it is just complete fake news. It is made up. The science does not support that statement. There is absolutely no data that can show that putting fluoride in the water prevents cavities, especially in low-income areas, which have a higher rate of, they're more fluoridation. And there's been more adverse effects. Another interesting thing is that there are certain ethnic groups that also, it's been shown to have greater harm. They have more fluorosis, more damage to their teeth. And so this is a barbaric practice, and it's time to end this, Frankenstein public health experiment of the past 75 years. And really, if you want a healthy mouth, if you want healthy teeth and gums, if you want a healthy body, you need a healthy ecology. You need to balance the natural ecology of the mouth, called the human microbiome, or the oral microbiome. And the oral microbiome is a very complex community that there's something called the dento-sialo-microbial complex. Teeth, saliva, and your microbial flora. They work together. When it is in balance, believe it or not, the oral microbiome is an intelligent, semi-permeable membrane that transports minerals from saliva, and they're ionic minerals, phosphate and calcium, which is hydroxyapatite, by the way. You can do natural hydroxyapatite, everybody, which your teeth and bones are made of. You don't have to throw it in a toothpaste. They tried that. NASA actually developed nanohydroxyapatite in the 1970s, and they were trying to test it on astronauts and see how it affect mineralization of teeth. And the reality is, it does help make, create a mineral, like fluoride creates a mineral, but that mineral is weak and very subject to acid erosion, so it doesn't really work.
Well, isn't there some other issue with the nanoparticle size of hydroxyapatite, that form? Can you talk about that briefly?
Nanoparticles are so small that when you use it in a toothpaste in your mouth, it can actually penetrate the soft tissue and damage DNA, mitochondria, and cells. And they found nanoparticles in lungs, aspiration in the lungs, and all this stuff. Again, it's another fad like charcoal or oil pulling, which is an Ayurvedic practice of just helping to eliminate an unhealthy microbiome. So oil pulling, for everyone out there, and he's like, oh, oil pulling, it's great. It's an Ayurvedic practice. Really, oil pulling is good short term if your mouth is unhealthy. So, I mean, I spent 20.
And what does it do? What is happening when you oil pull? Because, and maybe
it's a detergent.
I'm glad you brought this up, but
believe it or not, it's like a natural detergent that removes plaque from teeth. So if you use it over a long period, you also go out of homeostasis. You will have an atrophic microbiome and an atrophic biofilm, which is like a desert. Unhealthy is, in the middle of the target here. In the middle is where you have balance. Unhealthy is when you go to the left, which is atrophic, very thin. Smokers, for example, have atrophic biofilms in their mouth. There's desiccation. People who have radiation therapy have atrophic biofilms. Chemotherapy can create an atrophic biofilm. And oil pulling long-term can create an atrophic biofilm. And then you get demineralization of your teeth. You get sensitivity and erosion of your enamel. The other extreme to the right, far left, far right, you have an overgrowth of the biofilm, and you have spirochete propagation and all this unhealthy anaerobic bacteria and all that. So you have lions and tigers and bears or a Sahara Desert. You really want to be in the middle. That's what we call microbial homeostasis. And so my focus in all of my research, in all of the developments I've done, has been on promoting microbial homeostasis. And what we found is when we did this, which is prebiotic, and you have vitamin C, D, E, K, ionic minerals, and CoQ10. CoQ10 is a wonderful ingredient. That and vitamin C are wonderful for the mouth. But also D and K, really important for enamel mineralization, for stronger bones, and also for reduction of inflammation. So everything you do, and the first thing, this is a product, first of all, you can swallow. My son just redid the packaging, so it looks healthy. But this is my contribution to the world for changing it's disruptive to what oral care has been for the past 100 years, which is all about detergents and chemicals and scrubbing away and killing plaque and killing germs. No, what we really want to do is you want to be healthy, everyone. Make peace with your microbes. We want to get out of the pesticide business, and we want to do organic gardening. So in our studies, people brush with this for 3 days, and they wake up in the morning and their mouth still feels clean. They don't have that thick, sticky, smelly film on their teeth because that's an unhealthy imbalance. But when you brush with a detergent toothpaste, you're brushing with xylitol toothpaste, you're brushing with, charcoal, you're brushing with all of this stuff, or commercial toothpaste, you are stripping the microbiome. You do not need to kill strep mutans. You just need to make them peaceful. You need to make peace with them because when they are in balance, they are benign and they are beneficial in a larger community.
To really put this in simple terms for folks, it's like your intestinal microbiome. The more diverse your microbiome is, that means the more different types of bacteria in your gut, the better. And in your mouth, as you're saying, it's the same way. So there may be bacteria that are considered harmful or pathogenic, but there's a lot of good bacteria, and those good bacteria keep the bad bacteria in check. It's a little bit overly simplistic, but that is what's happening.
And I'm going to correct you one step further.
Please do.
Because there's no such thing as good bacteria and bad bacteria. There are bacteria that behave good like people behave good, or bacteria that behave bad like people behave bad. And if they behave good, we call them probiotics. And if they behave bad, we call them pathogens. The pathogens in a patient's mouth. That's why all the salivary testing and, oh, you got Porphyromonas gingivalis, you got a lot of Porphyromonas gingivalis. That tells me that your microbiome is not in balance. And you know,
it's the environment that's triggering the behavior.
Gingivalis, and oh, you have a lot of Fusobacterium nucleatum, and so they, like, these doctors don't get it. Bacteria is a microcosm of who we are. By the way, our mitochondria are the same shape as a bacterium. They divide the same. They hold the genetic information. And there's a lot of theories that in that cosmic event, whether you are a creationist or an evolutionist, or if you want to get as in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, when it said, and God took from the dust of the earth and breathed his spirit, and we became mind, body, spirit. Well, God didn't take dust. The word actually is slime from the Aramaic and the ancient Hebrew text. Slime. And the earth was covered with microbial slime before you and I were, and our species was even on the planet. So if we evolved or were created from that microbial slime, it sort of explains the very symbiotic relationship between man and microbe that goes back the many hundreds of thousands of years. With that knowledge and that understanding, that's what we call a Copernican revolution in science. It's as big as when Copernicus said, well, the earth isn't the center of the universe. We revolve around this big ball called the sun. And that's our that's how profound the change in our understanding of our humanity and our relationship to the microbial world. And so the Human Microbiome Project was a Copernican revolution in our lifetime. And all I did with this is I created a product that respects that science. There's no ego. I'm not in this for the money and the da-da-da-da-da. I've had a wonderful career. I'm really grateful to God for everything that I have, everything that I've done. My main ambition right now is to change the way dentistry is practiced. And secondly, to change what people use in taking care of their mouths, because that's the most important thing you can do. A healthy oral microbiome equals a healthy immune system, equals a regulated immune system, equals cancer prevention or healing from cancer.
It's a big step. And I think, and I've never used this toothpaste, so I can't endorse it, but I'm looking forward to using it. I'm actually excited to use it. Yeah, because I didn't even know. When we set up this interview, I didn't know that you had developed this. I didn't even know.
Chris WARK is getting Revitin this week.
Yes, free tube of toothpaste. It was worth it.
We have a 20% off. We'll do that. Nick, we'll give everyone on chrisbeatcancer your whole.
Oh, nice.
Your tribe gets a Revitin code.
Just use, how about coupon code Chris? Just use coupon code Chris. Does that work?
Coupon for Chris, right?
Yeah.
CHRIS, just that?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to have Deborah at Revitin. We're going to create a code for this podcast because I really want every patient to try it. Every one of your followers, just try it for 5 days. Just only use that, nothing else. And then go back to whatever you were doing. Because you will find that when you respect the science, and the science is really divine, okay? When you respect the science, you have a divine capacity to self-regulate and regulate and heal, starting with your oral microbiome, then your immune system, and then your entire body. I mean, I never realized how the mouth is really so essential and such a central component of total body healing.
I know we're over time here, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. I appreciate you just being willing to share and talk as much as you have. As busy as you are, I think, for a lot of the folks listening that have cancer, you mentioned this in the beginning, but I want to circle back to it. This was Dr. Rao's belief, and I'm assuming it's yours as well. But for cancer patients, do you still believe or advise them to get mercury fillings out, to get root canals out like right away?
There are two foundational components, I believe, of the dysregulation, because I believe when cancer is the end stage of that dysregulation. How do you dysregulate? The two biggest things are toxicity and inflammation. And then I believe, there's a lot of research going on right now with what happens when the gene flips, and then the kind of dysbiosis that takes over, especially parasites and things like that, and dealing with that. So that's why dealing with balancing your microbiome, yes, absolutely. The other thing with eliminating dysbiosis, but toxicity and inflammation, major sources, and everyone, this is a great way to wrap this. The most important area, the number one source of toxicity, chronic inflammation, chronic low-grade inflammation. That's what gum disease is. So gum disease is a biofilm imbalance, but gum disease is also a major source of chronic low-grade inflammation to the whole body, ravaging to the whole body. 8 types of cancer. Let me see if I have them all. Oral cancer, esophageal cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, stomach cancer. So you have gum disease as a major source. The number one bacterium in colorectal tumors is Fusobacterium nucleatum, which lives in the mouth.
That's right.
Doesn't mean you want to sterilize your mouth. You can't, if you sterilized your mouth, which is what all the killing plaque and, triclosan and all that, kill. Oh, look, I just got confetti.
Who is doing this? Where's this coming from?
Kind of keeps everyone's interest. Well, when we kill plaque, we are destroying a microbiome, and we're actually making you, if we were able to really kill plaque, I often say we would have unleashed ecological Armageddon, because our oral microbiome protects us. It keeps us alive. It's an essential part of the compartmentalization of our immune system. It is so, so important. It's foundational for your health. So it is not just about a healthy mouth and a healthy body and da-da-da-da-da. No, it is intricately connected in the modulation of your immune system. So understanding that the sources of toxicity and inflammation are root canals, are heavy metals, mercury fillings, plastic fillings have now been a big conference on microplastics at New York University Langone Medical Center. Microplastics are a big issue, much bigger than we once thought. Jaw cavitations and their ability to harbor serious pathogens and parasites, dysregulating your immune system. Those are the major things. I often do I do a lot of virtual consults. So everyone can go to our website, rejuvehealth.com, rejuve-health.com, and we can do virtual consults. We do 3D cone beams. We can analyze it. You can be wherever you live in the country, wherever you live in the world. We can do a virtual consult and identify some of these targeted areas of toxicity and inflammation.
That's great, because that was going to be my last question, is how can people connect with you, which obviously you're still in practice and they can work with you remotely. That's wonderful. Or come see you in person in the New York City area or the Hamptons area. But is there any other resource for a person to find a holistic or biologic dentist in their area?
That's kind of a loaded question, because I do have to say that there are a number of very good dentists. I always say there's a lot of good, I know a number of really good dentists that are not biologically minded, so they're not tuned into toxicity and inflammation. And I know a lot of so-called biologic dentists that are just unfortunately not very talented with their hands. And so they have hurt patients, even though they want to be healthy and they want to be. So there's a real gap right now in the profession between, even in the functional medicine side too, people are all over the map. So what I always say is, if you want the best thing I think is to get a virtual consult. You don't have to leave your home. You could do it. You could at least know what's going on. So when you do, and then we can help you find somebody in your community, but to just give you a list, unfortunately, I don't have that right now, but I will tell you, and here's the best news, is I am planning on establishing a center at a major university in the very near future to train and certify dentists in biologic dentistry. Like I said, my two life missions at this point in my career, when I don't really have to practice, are to teach, disciple, and build the future generation of dentists practicing dentistry in a conscious, awake manner, and then changing what people use to take care of themselves and how they take care of themselves, and what are the things they should look for and how they should do that. So there's education in two camps there. But again, I think the virtual consult is the best way or the safest way, where I could also help if you're in a community, in another area, we can help you try to get into the best hands that I feel are the most competent wherever you are.
That's great. Okay, folks. So what we'll do is we'll put links to connect with Dr. Gerry Curatola and to also learn more and get Revitin. I don't know if you call it toothpaste technically or
Revitin prebiotic toothpaste.
Okay, it is. Okay, good. Yeah, it is toothpaste.
I
didn't know if you were
really oral therapy. We're thinking
Yes.
of changing it to oral therapy.
Yeah, so we'll link to that in the show notes below this video. Wherever you're watching it, we'll make sure there's a link to connect with Dr. Curatola to get Revitin, and then he generously offered 20% off to coupon code Chris. So jump on that. I don't know how long that'll last, but anyway, it'll definitely be a working coupon code in the short term, maybe long term. We'll just see how it goes.
We'll try to get it set up for you.
Yeah, that's great.
Keep it longer than just a week.
Yeah, we'll give some folks time to find it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Dr. Curatola, thank you. You have been so generous with your time. I appreciate you so much. I just love how much we think alike and have in common. And we're both so passionate, and, we're on the same team, obviously. So it's just always fun to connect with you and hear you, hear your perspective and your wisdom, and yet 40 years of, dentistry. You really, I believe you. And I think you carry a lot of authority and wisdom, and it's wonderful. So thanks for the good work that you're doing. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. And thanks for watching, everybody. Please share this video with people you care about. Most people don't know anything about dentistry, right? They think fluoride's healthy. They think silver mercury fillings are safe. They think root canals are safe. Like this is a really important education opportunity for folks in your circle, in your life, to help them kind of open their eyes and start thinking about these things, and hopefully they'll read and research more, and it can prevent some pretty serious chronic disease by taking steps now that put them on a healthier path. That's what we're here to do. See you, everybody. Bye-bye.